The story of Japan's current navy starts with the establishment of the Japanese Empire in January 3, 1868. The Japanese Empire was established after the overthrow of the long-ruling Tokugawa family, also known as the last shogunate, for a more modern and industrialized society most commonly associated with powerful Western countries. Early signs of revolt came from anti-Western sentiment of rebelling daimyos and samurais, who felt that Western powers were encroaching in their country and influence in East Asia. And with the adoption of Western weapons and Western military tactics, the revolting forces were able to successfully defeat the Tokugawa shogunate. What came after was reform that completely dismantled the long-standing feudal system and the age of the samurais in a period of reform under the Meiji Restoration. During the Meiji Restoration, the former rebel leaders collectively worked to establish a strong military presence in Asia that will rival the world's most powerful militaries. During this time, the Japanese modeled their existing navy after the Royal Navy, the naval branch of the British military. During this time, Britain also wanted to maintain influence in Asia, so it allied itself with the newly established Japanese Empire in 1902. Which expanded into many areas of collaboration. However, the nature of the collaboration won't take off until the beginning of World War I. During World War I, Britain was in war with Germany, which made German colonies to be considered military targets for British military attack. One of such territories was a German-built port and naval base in Chinese Tsingtao. The establishment of the base was part of a deal between China and Germany that granted the Germans a 99-year lease of the territory. And because of the existing relationship between Japan and Britain, and Japan's desire to expand its military capabilities, the German colony of Tsingtao became a target during World War I. Japan, seeing the opportunity, would give an ultimatum to Germany in August of 1914 for a complete removal of German forces in Tsingtao. On August 23rd, Japan declared war on Germany and invaded Tsingtao. During the war, the Japanese Navy became the first navy to use seaplanes to attack land targets in September 9, 1914. And after 2 weeks of heavy fighting, the German troops numbering 4,000 would surrender to the Japanese forces of 60,000 on November 7, 1914. The action taken by Japan during World War I greatly cemented the relationship between Japan and Britain, and during the summer of 1920, the Japanese ambassador to London would ask the British to send an official naval mission to Japan to help them develop naval aviation capabilities. The Royal Navy greatly pushed back against the idea, as it would potentially create another rival in the Asia-Pacific theater. However, the political class in Britain, involving the Air Ministry, Department of Trade, and British aviation industry, would voice their support for such cause. Therefore, in early 1921, a naval mission consisting around 100 British-built aircrafts arrived in an airbase outside of Tokyo. Over the following 18 months, the Japanese pilots were trained in various aspects of naval aviation. The Japanese were taught how to fly, how to dogfight, how to navigate the waters, and how to use aerial torpedoes. Moreover, the naval aviation mission also helped Japan craft and build their first aircraft carrier, called the Hosho. After the naval aviation mission was over, the people involved in the mission would still play a major role in the advancement of Japanese Navy for years to come, in a form of espionage. But before we discuss Japanese espionage in the early 20th century, we need to discuss the history of Japanese espionage in its entirety. The history of Japanese espionage is one of the most well-documented instances of espionage in history, which starts with the establishment of a spying class known as ninjas. Ninjas were primarily used to serve the ruling class of Japan during the 17th and 19th century. However, with the adoption of a new system, Japan moved away from the use of ninjas to a world of espionage we now know today. By using spies that came from all walks of life in an unofficial capacity, Japan built up a powerful spy network during the 20th century. The list of spies include people from different backgrounds that would work as freelance agents for an undisclosed amount of money. This effort by the Japanese military would bear fruit on multiple fronts. For example, during their conquest in North China, also known as Manchuria, it would allow them to maintain a pro-Japan vassal state. As Japan's espionage capabilities were expanding in the early 20th century, the Japanese Empire was willing to go to any lengths to acquire more technology from the Royal Navy. However, the Japanese Empire didn't have to seek far to accomplish their goal, since the people involved in the initial naval mission were the perfect candidates to turn to their side. One of these people involved in the initial naval mission and helped the Japanese Navy reach to new heights was a British World War I Royal Air Force veteran and decorated squadron leader named Frederick Joseph Rutland. Frederick Rutland was a World War I pilot that received a Distinguished Service Order for his brazen low-flying attacks against German cruisers in the Battle of Jutland in 1916. However, after participating in the naval mission to Tokyo, he would abruptly retire from the Royal Air Force. This abrupt departure from the RAF would grab the attention of the British security services. Moreover, as time went on, the Government Communication Headquarters, GCHQ, would break Japanese naval codes that revealed communication between the Japanese Naval Attaché in London and the Japanese Naval Intelligence in Tokyo. In these codes, the Japanese talk about a man with the codename Shinikawa and his inconsistent performance as a spy for the Japanese Empire. Later, it was discovered Shinikawa was a codename for Frederick Rutland. Frederick Rutland was a valuable asset to the Japanese Navy since he possessed a deep knowledge of aircraft carriers and deck landings. And from the 1920s to the 1940s, Frederick would covertly aid the Japanese Navy build up its naval capabilities. And during this time, he would also travel to the United States and establish himself in Hawaii to continue his espionage for the Japanese Empire. Furthermore, he also played a role in shaping the Japanese perception of the United States, since in one of the intercepted Japanese communications, he allegedly told his Japanese handlers that everyone he met in the United States thinks war with Japan is inevitable. War with Japan would come to be true after the Japanese Navy attacks Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941. This event would force the United States to declare war on Japan and enter the war officially. However, before the war started, Frederick would quietly move back to Britain, where a week after the declaration of war by the United States, he would be detained and interned for a couple of years. Years after World War I was over, Frederick would later commit suicide and die. Even though Frederick was not the only person from the official naval mission to Japan that would covertly aid the Japanese advance in their naval capabilities, he was greatly responsible for expanding Japan's war readiness and naval technology beyond the stated objective of the official naval mission. Some say he was solely responsible for the Pearl Harbor attack, and others say if it wasn't for his espionage, Japan would not be able to fight the United States in the Pacific theater. But all can agree that Frederick Rutland was instrumental for the Japanese advancement in naval technology during the early 20th century.